We are speaking with Dream Theater keyboardist Jordan Rudess. Rudess. The new album is Wired for Madness, and of course, folks are saying, "Well, no, it's Distance Over Time." No, the new solo album, sir. Let's talk about that first. Talk to me about this concept of putting out a solo album. This, if you include the Christmas album and Prime Cuts, we're at about 15 solo albums. Talk to me about that importance to be creative and to have a voice outside of the main gig.
Sure. So, my whole life is music. I've been playing since I was 7 years old, uh, playing, starting with classical music,
Oh,
eventually going to Juilliard and then leaving Juilliard, figuring out how to support myself when I left, what I was going to do. And in that time, playing, show tunes and songs from movies and all different kinds of stuff in hotels and restaurants. And, so my path has led me into a lot of different avenues, which, include many different styles. So it's important for me as a musician to be able to express myself in all these different forms. And I'm the kind of musician that actually almost naturally takes in the different styles and kind of goes through whatever process in my brain
right.
and can make them come out in my own way. So that's very much what this album was about, and that's what my solo albums are really about, is being able to express. But this one particularly, it's a real kind of blending of all the stuff that I've been carrying around with me that really needed to come out. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe for some musicians, it's not as critical to have a solo album, or maybe they would have it for a different reason. For me, it's totally creative to be able to express, all the different ideas. I'm always creating, though. I mean, I'm like not. It's just that's what I do. It's kind of nonstop. If I'm not doing music, I'll be doing visual things. We're doing other spacey, kind of creative endeavors. So this album was really important, and it's a real extension of who I am. Uh-oh, just lost your audio.
Oh, there you go. The video on my end has frozen. So should I try to just call you back and try to get the video because all I've got is there you are. You are
It's just
returned.
doing that today. I don't know why. It must be the hotel internet is freezing it.
All
But
right.
anyway,
So let, let,
refreshing.
let us continue. Here we go on 3, 2, 1, and there we go. And fans here are noticing that Jordan is actually live now. The image was frozen before, but let's continue with the album now. It is not just you completely solo. You brought in some key players. You, of course, have Rod Morgenstein, you have James Labrie, you've got John Petrucci, but particularly for me, I find interesting Joe Bonamassa. Talk to me about that because he's not known as a progressive guy. He's more of a do I want to call him a blues man? I guess maybe more, right? Talk to me
Yeah.
about that collaboration.
Sure. I mean, he's a great guitar player who's been having a lot of success in the blues genre. Of course, he can play a lot of different things. Um, yeah. So was part of the fun of doing a solo album like this is having friends and great musicians come and join me. So as you said, I had James and John from Dream Theater come and kind of guest and do a nice appearance, but also Joe Bonamassa is playing on my blues track, which is called Just Can't Win, as well as a full brass ensemble is on the track. It's kind of fun. I have guitarist Vinnie Moore, who's on the album, and Guthrie Govan is playing on it as well, and the guitarist from Special Providence, which is a very amazing fusion prog group out of Hungary. Alec Darson is playing. The wonderful Russian singer Mariana Sankina from the group I Am the Morning is on the album as well. Have the Page brothers who are singing backup harmonies. They're an internet sensation, wonderful vocalists that are doing some great work on the record as well. So, yeah, let's see who else. You said Rod Morgenstein and Elijah Wood is playing on a couple of tracks on drums. So we have just a nice, family of of guests that are kind of joining in on the madness, if you will.
Is that part of the creative process? Because I guess, in a sense, when you have sort of a team and you have the four guys, you sort of get into a groove and you have a certain, well, we're going to go this way with it. But when you have these different players, you got different guitar styles, different vocal styles. Does that add to the creative process and saying, okay, this song is perfect, but oh, if Joe plays it, it'll be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the core of the album is just comes from me in my studio creating all this stuff, and then there were spots for solos basically, and also I wanted to have real drums instead of my demo kind of MIDI drums. So, but then it was a matter of picking who I wanted to play where, and as I was creating the stuff, I kind of had a feeling for who might be able to fit into the different sections. So it was a little bit like in some cases, like in the Joe Bonamassa case, I was like, wow, let me write a tune that would be appropriate to have Joe come and join me. For most of the other cases, it was more like I'm writing this stuff, and now I'll find somebody that could, really do a great job making it happen, or adding, this nice solo section to it. So
Which makes sense. So let me ask you this real quick. In At the end of last year, you did the From Back to Rock tour. Is that something that now that this album's come out or is coming out here in the middle of April, that you are going to go and do your own tour? Because I'll ask you this in the context of the timing. You're on tour with Dream Theater. The tour is doing exceptionally well, sold out as we said. Um, does it sort of just drop and that's it, or is there a plan to say, okay, once we're and then bring it out on the road?
yeah, I'd love to do some support of this album. I have that in my brain. Of course, Dream Theater is just embarking on this massive touring experience, so it's not going to happen soon. But I mean, I am interested and will be looking for time slots and ways that I can do that for sure.
For sure. And of course, From Back to Rock had that sort of classical element. Is that something that you also want to revisit? Or I mean, so how do you sort of approach it? Is it like one project at a time and you go, okay, I've done that, now I'm going to go on to the next challenge? Or it's like,
Well,
okay,
yeah, okay. So I grew up as a trained to be a classical pianist, and this last solo tour I did Bach to rock, actually, as in Johann Sebastian Bach. So I decided to go out and take that as was a very unique kind of concert experience where I basically told the journey, my musical journey, which was from Bach to rock. And I started by playing, literally Bach and Chopin, and kind of moved through some solo stuff and Liquid Tension and Dream Theater arrangements, all on piano. So that was a very unique and important personal kind of like uh, tour. So with Wired for Madness, of course, the music is very different. I have to think about how I want to do that. Do I take out an orchestra of 5 or 10 keyboard players to recreate the gazillion tracks that I recorded in the studio, or do I do it in a different way? I don't know yet, but I got to think about that, and it will be its own thing when it happens.
musical experience. Oh, okay, so you mentioned tracks and stuff, and let me just ask you this because there's been a lot in the press these days about certain bands using tracks and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Is that something that you use as an enhancement to shows? Is it something that you're completely against? Is it just logical? Because you're right, you can't bring around a 15-piece orchestra from city to city because it costs a lot of
Yeah.
money.
And just I'll talk about it from my own music and my solo album, Wired for Madness. When I'm in the studio creating that, I am all out for just using the studio as a wonderful tool to make the magic happen, to have this sonic palette that I can just paint this picture with all these wonderful colors. I'm not thinking, oh, if I play the strings and this electronic sound and I use this kind of like gurgly voice sound and da da da, then how am I going to do it live? I don't think like that at all in the studio. This refreshing video. There we go. So yeah, so I just go for it, and then in this case, I will want to play some of it live, so I'll figure it out. And as far as backing tracks go, I'll do is I'll pick the most active kind of happening track. Obviously, if I do the backing track routine, which I probably will, and so people will not be lacking energy from the stage. They'll just sonically be hearing the whole picture, which means you're recording, which means you're playing backing tracks. everybody uses backing tracks nowadays. I mean, unless you're like a jam band or something like that, and you're just jamming and just doing that kind of approach.
It's funny though that fans will focus in on one band and they'll say that band is cheating. It's like, dudes, 99% have been cheating since 1985. So
Yeah, I mean, you want people to these days,
yeah, and maybe cheating's not the right word. Enhancing.
well, yeah, you want people to hear, what you created, and my feeling is that don't do it in a way that where you're going to be sacrificing kind of like the energy of the band and just kind of just almost like going for a free ride, as the player. You want to be putting your energy behind it and playing. And yeah, if you have some background vocals, you have some extra parts on your backing tracks, great. It'll just make it more sonically enjoyable. But the important part is for the band to present and to really be putting out their full energy and power, whether or not there's backing tracks. That's
Yeah.
everybody uses them.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'll also say at the price of tickets, especially arena shows, when you're hitting the $150 range, you don't want to go have a 3 hour experience of the sound cutting out or feedback. You want to have a pleasant evening. Anyway, let me move on from that because
Yeah,
there's also WIZDOM music. You are creative musically, but you're also creative in this what do you want to call it, internet field or app field. You make all these different apps. Talk to me about the different creativity and the different process. So when you sit down and a song comes to your head, fine, you get out the computer or the keyboard and you talk to me about putting together these apps. Is it you alone? Is it a team?
sure. Yeah. Well, I have a company. It's called WIZDOM Music, WIZDOM with a Z. We make primarily iOS apps, although we've done some other stuff, and we have plans to move into other directions as well. The reason I got into that is because I've always been inspired by musical instruments, specifically when I first played my Mini Moog and started to turn knobs on it. It kind of blew my mind, and I got very involved in that, in just using it in a very particular way, other than just playing on the keyboard, but understanding the expressivity of all the different knobs and buttons and all that stuff. When I discovered the iPhone, even though when it first came out, it did
Are you
very,
enjoying the internet Wi-Fi today?
yeah, right, the hotel
but
Wi-Fi.
but continue, yeah.
I've been pretty good at catching it though. So yeah, when the iPhone first came out, it didn't do a whole hell of a lot sonically or visually, but I had some ideas for what it could do. Specifically, the whole multi-touch angle, where every finger goes down on the screen, and you could move in different ways. And I had some thoughts about ways that could be used to be expressive musically and graphically. So years ago, I created an app called MorphWiz, which was kind of a brainchild of mine, which I partnered with somebody who could actually code it. I'm not a computer programmer. I need to work with people who know how to do that to make my kind of visions come into reality. So yeah, MorphWiz got it started. It's still available on the iTunes App Store to this day. But then I did a bunch of them, like SampleWiz, which a lot of people still using. It's a cool app. It lets you basically have your iPhone. It means you're walking around with a sampler at any moment. You can just be taking samples of whatever you hear and whatever you're passing by, and it can be amazing because it's a very flexible musical sampler. I think I just called it up on my iPhone so you could hear what it sounds like. So you can take a sample and then you can take a sample and then you can take a sample and then you can take a sample. You can do all kinds of fun stuff with the waveform or with the little keyboard. Take a sample. Take a sample. So it's a whole lot of fun. So you could do it's a whole lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun. So that was one of them. These
That's
days I
great.
came up with a new instrument called GeoShred. It's a very, very popular musical instrument. It's being used all over the world, mostly in India and the United States. And I use it on stage with Dream Theater as well. Very cool, expressive, instrument that it's getting a lot of airtime on a lot. People are really digging it. It looks a little bit like this, and it sounds a little bit like this. You can slide around, play some cool sounds, play some leads. So, Geoshred.
That is great. And I'm going to ask you the silly question, but obviously when you do that, you can record that and keep it for later,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, of course.
absolutely. Yeah, you can. And
That
you can
is
back.
spectacular. So, has a company come to you? I mean, like, has Apple come to you, or yeah, well, Apple. I was going to say iTunes, but has Apple come to you and say, "Hey, let's start doing stuff together," or are you doing these really just with Wisdom Music independently?
Well, Apple is my distributor basically because that's how this stuff works. You
Okay,
create.
but I mean, are they creating with you in terms of their research and development, or you just sort of throw it on the iTunes store and that's distribution? That's it.
Well, okay. The answer to that question is I work pretty closely with Apple. They always are. I always go there for meetings and show them what I'm doing, and they give feedback and all that. I'm not working with them on any Apple products. They're Wisdom Music products which go on their store. But is there a relationship there? Yes, there is.
Before we run out of time, let me just quickly ask you about distance over time and the tour. First thing I'm going to ask is, you have had John Petrucci,
Yeah.
uh, produce a lot of the last album. In fact, he produces almost all the albums. Talk to me about having somebody in the band produce the band. Is there a point where you need to have some outside ears and get an outside perspective, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
We've really enjoyed self-producing. John is really great. He knows us all. We're a pretty, complicated group of musicians in the sense that, we do things that are not ordinary. We've been around for a long time. It's not a standard operation. One of the things that's been consistent about Dream Theater since the beginning, except with a few times in their career where maybe it got a little different, is that we do what we want. We create our own unique blend of music. A little hard for us to accept somebody coming in from the outside world and telling us what to do, especially in the case that we've had a lot of success kind of doing our own thing. So, it might be fun at some point in the future to work with somebody else and have their take on what we do. I mean, I would respect an artist like Steven Wilson, who's my good friend, who is so musical, nothing could
He's
be bad.
great.
Yeah, he's not gonna make anything bad happen, certainly. But does it need to happen? Do we need an outside producer? Not really. I don't think. I think there's enough freedom of ideas, and a lot of the production role is organizational, making things happen, getting them out, preparing, working with the record company on all the factors that go into having an album come out, and we do that pretty well ourselves.
Yeah, I don't think you can complain about the track record. I mean, album after album is revered, it's reviewed, consistently high, and tours are sold out. So, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, it's just,
where do
yeah.
you go better, right?
Right. I mean, this new album, basically, it's been top 10 all around the world, and so people are just loving it. They're um, enjoying it so much. So, I just feel like we're onto a good thing. And the other part of this is that Scenes from a Memory is what we're also celebrating. Um, I was looking at what's happening with the camera.
No, well, you're still there. No worries.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, so Scenes from a Memory, it was one of the most, favorited Dream Theater albums, and we are out here not only playing our new album Distance Over Time, but we're also doing scenes
yep.
for the whole thing for a second set. So people are very excited. It's a great time for Dream Theater, and as far as if we need to change anything, I mean, we're just kind of on a good roll here, just in our flow.
And
So
and I'll finish with this because we've got 20 minutes and we've got hotel Wi-Fi. But John himself has said in an interview that the album was more Dream Theater-y than The Astonishing. Is that something that the band worries about? Because when I think of bands with a sound, AC/DC does one thing, and then I've never seen Dream Theater as doing sort of one thing and having a particular sound. It's just like, oh, that's the next step in the band's discography.
right, right.
Is that something that's important to you to have sort of a dream theatery sound, or you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there is. I mean, there's kind of well, let's say this, there's a core sound to Dream Theater. There's certain things that we do that people identify as Dream Theater. There is a brand, if you will. And we can stretch that. We can do different things where people could go, oh, that's not as much like the core sound. Like, in The Astonishing, we got a little bit more sensitive, maybe, in certain parts where it got a little sweet, and people are not used to hearing that as part of what we do, but yet Dream Theater is, as those who've been following us for years know, they know that we are stylistically very open. We can do a lot of different stuff, but what the core is what the core is. It's what we've done mostly. So and that involves, like good choruses and heavy riffs and some cool odd meters and there's certain things we do more often than not. So
No, just I see Dream Theater as being more free in the sense that, if AC/DC came up with a song, an album with loops and drum things, you'd go, "Oh, what is that?" But if Dream Theater does an album that's, out of left field, you go, "Oh, well, they're just exploring new space," there's an acceptance to it. There's not
yeah,
like a
yeah. But that said, we've never been like a Radiohead. We were
right.
completely diverged to something else, totally different. We always keep it. The Astonishing was different, but it was not a complete left turn. It was just kind of a creative venture. We went into a slightly different mode. But this new album is kind of coming back to the root of the matter, and we basically got everybody in the band engaged and energized, and we just went for it, and we created the album that you hear, which everybody's really excited about.
Very excited about. And of course, Wired for Madness comes out April 19th. And I'm just trying to see here. It comes in CD, 2 LP, limited edition, blue vinyl, limited edition, red vinyl. And of course, stream and downloads.
Yeah.
Absolutely a pleasure to talk to you. Always, always great. And hey, if you have room for a guest in Montreal, I'm available. But, but Jordan, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Mitch. Thanks for your time as well and your support. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. We'll do this again soon.
Okay, man. Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.
All right.